The SKS is a Soviet semi-automatic carbine chambered for the 7.62 x 39 mm round, designed in 1943 by Sergei Gavrilovich Simonov. Its complete designation, SKS-45, is an initialism for Samozaryadnyj Karabin, sistemy Simonova, 1945, Simonov system, 1945. In the early 1950s, the Soviets took the SKS carbine out of frontline service and replaced it with the AK-47. However, the SKS remained in second-line service for decades. It is still used as a ceremonial firearm today. The SKS was widely exported, and was also produced by some former Eastern Bloc nations as well as China, where it was designated the Type 56 carbine, East Germany as the Carabiner S, and in North Korea as the Type 63. The SKS is popular on the civilian surplus market as a hunting and marksmanship semi-automatic rifle in many countries, including the United States, Canada, and New Zealand. Its age and numbers make it very inexpensive to purchase. The SKS was the second firearm to be chambered for the 7.62 x 39 mm M43 round, with the first being the RPD design. The SKS has a conventional layout, with a wooden stock and rifle grip. The SKS is a gas-operated rifle that has a spring-loaded bolt carrier and a gas piston rod that work the action via gas pressure pushing against them. Also, it has a tilting bolt action locking system. The SKS is shorter and less powerful than the semi-automatic rifles that preceded it, such as the Soviet SVT-40. However, the SKS has a 10 cm longer barrel than AK series rifles, which replaced it. As a result, it has a slightly higher muzzle velocity. The SKS's 10-round internal box magazine can be loaded either by hand or from a stripper clip. Cartridges stored in the magazine can be removed by depressing a latch located forward of the trigger guard. In typical military use, the stripper clips are disposable. If necessary, they can be reloaded multiple times and reused. While early Soviet-in models had spring-loaded firing pins, most variants of the SKS have a free-floating firing pin within the bolt. Because of this design, care must be taken during cleaning to ensure that the firing pin does not stick in the forward position within the bolt. SKS firing pins that are stuck in the forward position have been known to cause accidental slam fires. This behavior is less likely with the hard primer military spec ammo for which the SKS was designed, but as with any rifle, uses should properly maintain the firearms. For collectors, slam fires are more likely when the bolt still has remnants of cosmoline embedded in it. The firing pin is triangular in cross-section, and slam fires can also result if the firing pin is inserted upside down. In most variants, the barrel is chrome-lined for increased wear and heat tolerance from sustained fire and to resist corrosion from chloride-primed corrosive ammunition, as well as to facilitate cleaning. Chrome bore lining is common in military rifles. Although it can diminish actual accuracy, this is not a real limit on practical accuracy in a rifle of this type. The front sight has a hooded post. The rear sight is an open notch type which is adjustable for elevation from 100 to 1000 meters. There is also an all-purpose battle setting on the sight ladder, set for 300 meters. This is attained by moving the elevation slide to the rear of the ladder as far as it will go. The Yugoslav M59-66A1 has fold-down luminous sights for use when firing under poor light conditions, while the older M59 and M59-66 do not. All military SKSs have a bayonet attached to the underside of the barrel, which is extended and retracted via a spring-loaded hinge. Both blade and spike bayonets were produced. Some versions, such as the Yugoslav Yugoslavian-made M59-66 variant, are also equipped with a grenade-launching attachment. The SKS is easily field-stripped and reassembled without any tools, and the trigger group and magazine can be removed with an unfired cartridge. The rifle has a cleaning kit stored in a trapdoor in the buttstock, with a cleaning rod running under the barrel, in the same style as the AK-47. In common with some other Soviet-era designs, it trades some accuracy for ruggedness, reliability, ease of maintenance, ease of use, and low manufacturing cost. History. During World War II, many countries realized that existing rifles, such as the Mosin Nagant, were too long and heavy and fired powerful cartridges that were effective in medium machine guns with a range in excess of 2,000 meters, creating excessive recoil. These cartridges, such as the 8x57mm Mauser, 303 British, 30-06 Springfield, and 7.62x54mm were effective in rifles to ranges of up to 1,000 meters. However, it was noted that most firefights took place at maximum ranges of between 100 and 300 meters. Only a highly trained specialist, such as a sniper, could employ the full-power rifle cartridge to its true potential. Both the Soviet Union and Germany realized this and designed new firearms for smaller, intermediate power cartridges. The U.S. fielded an intermediate round in the .30 US, now known as the .30 carbine, used in the M1 carbine. It was widely used by American forces in World War II but never replaced the .30-06 rifle cartridge. The German approach was the production of a series of intermediate cartridges and rifles in the interwar period, eventually developing the machine carabiner, or machine carbine, which later evolved into the Sturmgewehr 44, which was produced in large numbers during the war, and chambered in the 7.92x33mm Kurz intermediate round. The Soviet Union type qualified a new intermediate round in 1943. At the same time it began to field the Mosin Nagant M44 carbine as a general-issue small arm. However, the M44, which had a side-folding bayonet and shorter overall length, still fired the full-powered round of its predecessors. A small number of SKS rifles were tested on the front line in early 1945 against the Germans in World War II. Design-wise, the SKS relies on the AVS-36 to a point that some consider it a shortened AVS-36, stripped of select fire capability and rechambered for the 7.62x39mm cartridge. Of course, this viewpoint is problematic, as the AVS uses a sliding block bolt locking device, while the SKS employs a more reliable tilting bolt design, which is an entirely different style. As the bolt mechanism is one of the defining features of a rifle, having a different bolt means the SKS and AVS merely appear similar in layout, while differing vastly in bolt lockup caliber, size, and that one has a fixed magazine and the other has a detachable magazine. It also owes a debt to the SVT-40 and M44 that it replaced, incorporating both the semi-automatic firepower of the SVT and the carbine size and integral bayonet of the bolt-action M44. In 1949, the SKS was officially adopted into the Soviet Army, manufactured at the Tula Armory from 1949 until 1955, and the Ijevsk Mechanical Plant in 1953 and 1954. Although the quality of Soviet carbines manufactured at these state-run arsenals was quite high, its design was already obsolete compared to the Kalashnikov, which was selective fire, lighter, had 3 times the magazine capacity, and had the potential to be less labor-intensive to manufacture. Gradually over the next few years, AK-47 production increased until the extant SKS carbines in service were relegated primarily to non-infantry and to second-line troops. They remained in service in this fashion even as late as the 1980s and possibly the early 1990s. To this day, the SKS carbine is used by some ceremonial Russian honor guards, much the same way the M14 rifle is within the United States. It is far less ubiquitous than the AK-47, but both original Soviet SKS rifles and copies can still be found today in civilian hands as well as in the hands of Third World militias and insurgent groups. The SKS was to be a gap-filling firearm manufactured using the proven operating mechanism design of the 14.5 times 114 mm PTRS-41 anti-tank rifle and using proven milled forging manufacturing techniques. This was to provide a fallback for the radically new and experimental design of the AK-47 in the event that the AK proved to be a failure. In fact, the original stamped receiver AK-47 had to be quickly redesigned to use a milled receiver, which delayed production and extended the SKS carbine's service life. Almost as soon as the SKS was brought into service, it was made obsolete for Soviet purposes by the new AK-47. However, it found a long second life in the service of the Chinese army, who found it well suited to their own style of warfare. The People's War, whose main actors were highly mobile, self-reliant guerrilla bands and rural militias protecting their own villages. In People's War, the emphasis was on long-range sniping, spoiling attacks, and ambushes. For this, the Chinese army preferred its version of the SKS to the AK pattern. From its introduction in 1956, the Type 56 SKS remained the workhorse of the People's Liberation Army for 30 years. In 1968, the army was briefly re-equipped with the unsuccessful Type 63 assault rifle, which had been intended to combine the sustained firepower of China's first AK-47 variant with the precise semi-automatic fire of the SKS Type 56 carbine and replace both of those separate rifles. However, by the mid-1970s, all manner of problems were plaguing the unreliable Type 63 rifle. Troops clamored to be given back their carbines, which had been redistributed to local militia units, and the army staff abandoned the Type 63 and returned the Type 56 carbine and Type 56 assault rifle back to service. The standard practice was for squad leaders and assistant squad leaders to carry an assault rifle and for most other soldiers to carry a carbine, so that a frontline infantry squad fielded 2 assault rifles, 2 light machine guns, and 7 carbines. However, after the beginning of China's 1979 border war with Vietnam, Chinese combat units found that the SKS carbine's capacity for long-range precision fire was wasted in the mountain jungles of the border region. As a result, those units were hastily re-equipped with assault rifles. Guns of the AK family are for structural reasons relatively inaccurate, and because the Chinese army has historically favored precision fire. The Sino-Vietnamese War directly hastened development of the PLA's Type 81 assault rifle. By the time border conflict broke out again between China and Vietnam in 1983, the Chinese military had already been completely re-equipped with the more accurate, precise Type 81 assault rifle. However, the Type 56 carbine still remains in service with Chinese militia and reserve forces. The Type 56 also is in frontline use as a drill and ceremony rifle. Many surplus SKS rifles were disposed of in the 1990s, and photographs and stories exist of SKS rifles used by guerrilla fighters in Bosnia, Somalia and throughout Africa and Southeast Asia during the 1990s and well into the 21st century. Several African, Asian, and Middle Eastern armies still use the SKS. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union shared SKS design and manufacturing details with its allies, and as a result, many variants of the SKS exist. Some variants use a 30-round AK-47 style magazine, gasport controls, flip-up night sights, and prominent muzzle-mounted grenade launch. In total, SKS rifles were manufactured by the Soviet Union, China, Yugoslavia, Albania, North Korea, Vietnam, and East Germany, with limited pilot production in Romania and Poland. Physically, all are very similar, although the NATO specification 22mm grenade launcher of the Yugoslav version, and the more encompassing stock of the Albanian version are visually distinctive. Early versions of Chinese Type 56s used a vertically aligned blade, whereas the majority of Chinese carbines made after 1971 used a spike bayonet. Many smaller parts, most notably the sights and charging handles, were unique to different national production runs. A small quantity of SKS carbines manufactured in 1955-56 was produced in China with Russian parts, presumably as part of a technology-sharing arrangement. Many Yugoslav M59-66 series rifles were exported to Uruguay and Mozambique, the Mozambique versions having teakwood stocks, the wood supplied by that nation. The vast majority of Yugoslav M59 and M59-66s have elm, walnut and beech stocks. Russian SKSs had stocks of Arctic birch, and the Chinese were of catalpa wood. SKS carbines have also made appearances in recent conflicts in Africa, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Today, the SKS is in service with Cambodia, Laos, China, North Korea and Vietnam, as well as many other countries in Africa. SKS rifles have been seen in the hands of pro-Ukrainian forces in eastern Ukraine as of May 2014. Nations that utilized the SKS but did not receive manufacturing rights included Afghanistan, Congo, Indonesia, Iraq, Laos, Lebanon, Mongolia, Morocco, the United Arab Republic, and the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen. Variants. After World War II, the SKS design was licensed or sold to a number of the Soviet Union's allies, including the China, the SFR Yugoslavia, Albania, North Korea, Vietnam, the German Democratic Republic, Romania and Poland. Most of these nations produced nearly identical variants, with the most common modifications being differing styles of bayonets and the 22mm rifle grenade launcher commonly seen on Yugoslavian models. Soviet differences from the baseline. Late Russian Tula Armory, Izhevsk Armory SKS variations. Early spike-style bayonet instead of blade-style. Spring return firing pin was present on early models, and they did not have chrome bores. The gas block had three changes. The first production stage gas block, used from 1949 through early 1950, was squared off at a 90-degree angle. The second gas block production stage was instead cut at a 45-degree angle, seen on late 1950 to 1951 rifles. The third and final gas block stage, from 1952 through to 1956, was curved inward slightly toward the action. Honor Guard. All chrome metal parts, with a lighter colored wood stock, OP SKS. Many military surplus Soviet SKS were converted into hunting rifles by the Hammer factory in Vyatskye Polyany. These were labeled OP. The OP SKS continued to be manufactured into the 2000s. Chinese Type 56. Numerous minor tweaks, including lack of milling on the bolt carrier, partially or fully stamped receivers, and differing types of thumb rest on the takedown lever. The Chinese continually revised the SKS manufacturing process, so variation can be seen even between two examples from the same factory. All of the Type 56 carbine rifles have been removed from military service, except a few being used for ceremonial purposes and by local Chinese militias. Type 56 carbines with serial numbers below 9 million have the Russian-style blade-type folding bayonet, while those 9 million and higher have a spike-type folding bayonet. Some early examples are known as Sino-Soviet, meaning they were produced by China, but with cooperation from Russian advisors, who helped regulate the factories and provided the design specifications. Experimental stamped receiver, very rare. A small number of Type 56 SKS rifles were manufactured with experimental stamped sheet metal receivers as a cost and weight saving measure, but did not enter large-scale production. Honor Guard, mostly but not all, chromed metal parts, does not generally have the lighter colored stock as the Soviet Honor Guard variant. Type 63, 68, 73, 81, 84, only a close relative to the SKS. These rifles shared features from several East Bloc rifles. AK-47 style rotary bolt and detachable magazine. The Type 68 featured a stamped sheet steel receiver. The Type 81 is an upgraded Type 68 with a 3-round burst capability, some of which have a folding stock. The Type 84 returns to semi-auto fire only, is modified to accept AK-47 magazines, and has a shorter 16 inches paratrooper barrel. Commercial production, blonde wood stock instead of dark wood, spike bayonet instead of blade, bayonet retaining bolt replaced with a rivet. Sub-variants include the M21, Cowboy's Companion, Hunter, Models D, M, Paratrooper, Sharpshooter, and Sporter. Model D rifles used military-style stocks and had bayonet lugs. Model M rifles had no bayonet lug and used either a thumbhole or Monte Carlo-style stock. Both Model D and M used AK-47 magazines, and as a result had no bolt hold open feature on the rifle. Other European Romanian M56, typically nearly identical to the late Soviet model. Polish SKS, refurbished Soviet rifles. Polish laminated stocks lack storage area in back of stock for cleaning kit. A few hundred SKSs were given to Poland by the Soviet Union around 1954. While never adopted for use by combat units, the SKS is still in use in ceremonial units of the Polish Army, Air Force, Navy, where they replaced SVT rifles. Honor Guards of the Polish Police and Border Guard also use SKS carbines. In Polish service they are known as KSS, which stands for Karabin Samopatrzalny Simonova, Simonov's semi-automatic rifle. Yugoslavian PAP M59, manufactured by Zastava Arms. Barrel is not chrome-lined. PAP stands for Polu-Automatsky Puska, and the rifle was nicknamed Papuka. Otherwise this rifle is nearly identical to the Soviet version. Yugoslavian PAP M59-66 added 22mm rifle grenade launcher which appears visually like a flash suppressor, a muzzle brake on the end of the barrel. Front sight has a fold-up ladder for use in grenade sighting. When the grenade sight is raised, the gas system is automatically blocked and the action must be manually cycled. Rifle grenades must be fired with special blank cartridges, and this feature helps ensure that the gas pressure is not wasted on cycling the action. The gas system is not automatically unblocked when the sight is folded, however, and must be manually opened to again allow semi-automatic operation. Barrel was not chrome-lined. Both the grenade launcher and grenade sight are NATO spec. Stock is typically made from beechwood. Yugoslavian PAP M59-66A1, same as above, except with the addition of flip-up phosphorus tritium night sights. Albanian July 10 rifle, longest stock in handguard on the gas tube, and AK-style charging handle. The magazine is slightly different in the shape visible from the outside. The stock has two compartments with two corresponding holes in the butt plate for cleaning implements instead of the single cleaning kit pocket, like the Chinese Type 56 carbine. The Albanian version also features a spike bayonet fixed beneath the muzzle. East German Carabiner S, extremely rare, slot cut in two back of stock for pull-through sling, similar to the slot in a Carabiner 98K. No storage area in back of stock, a storage for cleaning rod under barrel. Other Asian North Korean Type 63, extremly rare. At least 3 separate models were made. One standard model with blade bayonet, and a second with a gas shutoff and a grenade launcher, similar to the M59-66. The North Korean grenade launcher was detachable from the muzzle and the gas shutoff was different from the Yugoslavian model. However, a third model appears to have side-swinging bayonet. Vietnamese Type 1, extremely rare, nearly identical to both the Soviet and Sino-Soviet SKS. These are identified by a small star on the receiver with a 1 in the center. The barrel is chromed, as are many of the internal parts. It is unknown currently whether there are spiked bayonets or only bladed. The stockwork is identical to more common SKS variants such as the Soviet and Chinese. These appear to have been either converted Soviet or Sino-Soviet models, or simply cloned from these rifles. Quality disparities. There is some debate as to the relative manufacturing quality of each nation's SKS production. The Chinese SKSs varied significantly even among new rifles, with some having screwed-in barrels, milled trigger groups and bolt carriers with lightning reliefs cut into them being at the top end, and cheaper rifles having pinned barrels, stamped trigger groups and slab-sided bolt carriers, though overall quality and serviceability remained high. The main reason for the quality variance comes from differences between rifles made for the Chinese army and those made for export. Yugoslav types are generally considered to be better made than Chinese export rifles when new, but this is often negated by the poor condition they are in due to hard use and neglect. The Chinese types typically have chrome-lined barrels while the Yugoslav versions do not, resulting in some Yugoslavian carbines having bores in considerably worse condition than even the cheapest Chinese SKSs. The Yugo M59-66 rifles also are unique in having a gas shut-off valve for grenade launching, which is a common source of malfunctions. While often encountered in well-used condition, Romanian carbines were as well built as the Soviet versions. In general, carbines made in the USSR are considered the most high-quality, durable, and reliable. The interchangeability of many many parts has resulted in carbines on the U.S. market that are a mixture of different parts of varying quality, sometimes including parts from different countries, often with non-standard aftermarket parts. Such rifles are usually referred to as parts guns, and are generally considered the lowest quality carbines encountered. They are, however, drastically cheaper than comparable semi-automatic rifles and can be expected to reliably perform in the short term. North Korean, Vietnamese, East German, and Albanian SKSs bring a higher price than those of other countries. Soviet and Romanian carbines have largely reached price parity, with Chinese carbines somewhat lower in price. The stock on the Albanian versions is of a slightly different manufacture, and these were made in low production numbers. There were approximately 18,000 Albanian SKSs manufactured during the late 1960s until 1978, and of those, approximately half were destroyed. Most of the remaining East German SKSs had been sold, transferred to Croatia in the early 1990s. Conflicts. In the more than 60 years of use worldwide, the SKS has seen use in conflicts all over the world. Uses.